Hello and welcome back to HBB, Strictly Education Online Beauty Academy. So today we are going to talk about the types of hydroxide relaxers. We're going to talk about lye-based relaxers, no-lye relaxers, and low pH relaxers. Let's get started. Hydroxide relaxers. Hydroxide relaxers contain the hydroxide ion as their active ingredient. These relaxers are classified as potent alkalis with an extremely high pH above 13. Most common types of hydroxide relaxers include sodium hydroxide and guanidine hydroxide. Okay, now I want you to know we're talking about sodium and guanidine because those are the most commonly used relaxers. But there are other relaxers such as lithium, potassium, and calcium. So I want you to understand that. Now, with these relaxers, these hydroxide relaxers, these hydroxide ions, you see it's a hydroxide ion, this is just a part of what makes the compound an alkaline. Remember, alkaline is from a 7.1 to a 14 on the pH scale. So this is the alkaline side of the pH scale, but this compound, this hydroxide ion, makes it where it is above 13. Okay, this is what gives that relaxer that straightening power. Okay, these hydroxide relaxers, this is part of what gives it that straightening power because it's alkaline. Now, guanidine relaxers often contain ingredients like oils and moisturizers and conditioners and things like that because that is what helps those relaxers become more gentler. They're more easier on the scalp, let's say. All right. So now when we use these relaxers, they already having like a built-in moisturizer or whatever, just to keep the scalp from the hair from becoming very dry, because no-lye relaxers do have the tendency to make the hair become very dry. They're easier on the scalp, but they're harder on the hair. And the lye relaxers, sodium hydroxide, they're easier on the hair but harder on the scalp. So you kind of want to take that into consideration when you are choosing these relaxers. Now, lye relaxers have a shorter processing time or a shorter application time because they are higher on the pH scale. So that means that they work quicker, they break the hair down quicker. So they have a shorter processing time, so you don't need to leave them on as long as a no-lye. A no-lye relaxer has a longer processing time because it works slower. Okay, it works slower to break down the hair than the sodium hydroxide or the lye relaxer. All right. So you want to kind of like keep these things in mind. Guanidine relaxers may require that longer processing time, but still there is a manufacturer's set time of how long that this chemical should be on the hair. Okay, so they all have a set time. But the thing with doing these relaxers is that they need to be applied properly. Okay, they need to be applied properly. And remember, relaxers are not applied to the scalp. Hydroxide relaxers. When applied to the hair, hydroxide relaxers can cause swelling up to twice the hair's normal diameter. However, due to their distinct chemical composition, hydroxide relaxers are incompatible with thio relaxers, permanent waving solution, and soft curl permanents. Combining them could lead to undesirable reactions and damage to the hair. Now, I want to make it very, very clear that you cannot mix these chemicals. You cannot mix a thio relaxer and a hydroxide relaxer. Remember, a thio relaxer is to straighten the hair out, prep it to be curled. All right, meaning that when you talk about thio, there is a roller involved to make the hair from curly, from straight to curly, or from excessively curly, tightly coiled to a looser coiled type of curl. Now, you cannot get a thio relaxer and then in a couple months you decide that you want to go to a straight hydroxide relaxer. You cannot do that. You will cause breakage. Okay, so you always want to do a consultation with your client to make sure that you know what's on that hair. Okay, because if they have a hydroxide relaxer on the hair and you go and try to do a thio permanent wave, you're not going to get a curl because those bonds are already broken in that hair, and you cannot, I repeat, you cannot put a curl on that hair. You cannot do it. It will not curl. There is no concoction. There's nothing you can do to make that hair curly permanently with a thio relaxer after you have gotten a hydroxide relaxer. Now, if you have a thio relaxer and you have done a curl, or you just want to do a thio relaxer and leave the hair as it is, it's not going to work because you are going to break that hair. That thio relaxer is meant to curl that hair, to make the hair curly. If you do a thio relaxer, meaning anything for a soft curl, permanent, jerry curl, permanent wave, you're going to relax that hair, and the person is going to go now and treat this like a hydroxide relaxer with blow dryers and flat irons and curling irons. And what's going to happen is they're going to begin to see breakage, and they're going to see breakage pretty quickly. You know, so unless they're going to use this hydroxide, this thio relaxer, and they're going to keep that hair activated and moisturized, then so be it. But how could you style it? Because the hair is going to be constantly wet, moisturized. So you cannot, you are better off, if they want the hair straight, you should be using a hydroxide relaxer. Hydroxide relaxers. Hydroxide relaxers break the sulfide bonds differently compared to thio relaxers, which rely on reduction reaction. A disulfide bond consists of two sulfur atoms linked together. In the process of lithionization, through which hydroxide relaxers permanently straighten hair, the relaxers remove one sulfur atom from the disulfide bond, converting it into a lithionine bond containing only a single sulfur atom. The disulfide bond broken by hydroxide relaxers are permanently disrupted through this chemical transformation. All right, so first we remember that the sulfide bonds are the strongest bonds in the hair. They're the strongest bonds, and they are broken by chemicals only. They're the only bonds that are broken by chemical. Okay, now reduction reaction. Reduction reaction means that a substance is gaining an electron. All right, that's all that means. Oxidation reaction is when a substance is losing an electron. All right, so reduction gaining, oxidation is losing. All right, now let's talk about lithionization. Lithionization is when we rinse the hair. We rinse the relaxer. Remember, we relax the hair. We go through the whole relaxing process. But now we go to rinse the hair. We're removing the relaxer from the hair. Now, once we remove the relaxer from the hair, now we're going into the neutralizing stage, which means, remember, in permanent waving, we rolled the hair on rollers, let it sit, rinsed it, and now we're doing the neutralizing. Well, that neutralizer is a liquid, hydrogen peroxide, a liquid. But with a hydroxide relaxer, we are using a neutralizing shampoo, which means that it's a shampoo with a built-in neutralizing system. Now, once we rinse that hair, now we're going into the lithionization process. We are applying neutralizing shampoo, which now what happens is we are going in and we are setting those bonds to the new shape. Now, even though we relax that hair and we rinse that hair off. That hair is straight, okay? It is already straight. You cannot change it back. But in order to set those bonds in that hair, and we set those bonds to be in that permanent position, we have to neutralize that hair. We neutralize it with neutralizing shampoo. Okay, we don't neutralize it with just anything that we have around the house. We neutralize it with neutralizing shampoo. Okay, so if you're working in a salon and you don't have neutralizing shampoo, you got a problem. Okay, so neutralizing shampoo locks in that new shape, which is straight, because now we have taken the hair from curly to straight. Now, even though we have rinsed that hair and that hair is going to be straight, we're setting that hair into that new form. Now, what happens if we don't neutralize this hair with a neutralizing shampoo? There is no such thing as the hair goes back to the normal pH after 24 to 48 hours. There is no such thing. Because when you don't neutralize that hair with a neutralizing shampoo, that hair continues to break down, right? It continues to break down. The cuticle continue to be raised at a high pH, right? Now we can get scalp irritation. We can have leftover relaxer left on the scalp. We could have the cuticle is still open, right? So which will cause accelerated damage on the hair. It will weaken the hair strands over time. So we want to make sure that we use a neutralizing solution. Also, it can cause the hair to become very dull. Why? Because the cuticle is open. It accepts a lot of moisture. What happens when the moisture dries out? The hair now becomes very dry. It can become brittle. So we always want to use a neutralizing shampoo afterwards. A neutralizing shampoo is going, that first we rinse it out, rinse out that relaxer, is much of that chemical that we can get out. We rinse it out. That first shampoo is going to remove any chemical that is left on the hair. That's how come I said you can have leftover relaxer still in the hair, because the neutralizing shampoo is going to remove any of that chemical that is left on the hair, right? The second shampoo is going to stabilize that hair, right? It's going to stabilize that hair. It's going to close that cuticle. Close the cuticle. Because if you leave the cuticle open, the cuticle is open, the hair is still at a high pH, and we can have damage and things causing the hair to become very dry over time. This is not a good thing. So you always want to use a neutralizing shampoo to close the cuticle. Now, the third shampoo is to bring the hair back down to the natural pH. You always want to bring the hair back down to its normal pH, because when you leave it at a high pH like that, now the hair is in a very fragile condition. Because why? Because the cuticle is still open. The hair is going to become very dull. You can even have some color changes with that dullness, that pH being high. It causes that dullness, dryness. You don't want that. So we always want to use a neutralizing shampoo when we are using a hydroxide relaxer. Okay? Metal hydroxide relaxers. Metal hydroxide relaxers are ionic compounds formed by the combination of a metal cation, sodium, potassium, and lithium, with the hydroxide anion. These metal hydroxides include sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, and lithium hydroxide. Now, what are these metal hydroxides? These metal hydroxides are relaxers that go in. They apply to the hair, and what these metal hydroxides do is they break down the disulfide bonds directly, meaning that they just go in and break down these disulfide bonds. Whereas guanidine relaxers, they break down the bonds indirectly, meaning that they go in and what they do is they actually swell the hair up and then break down the disulfide bonds. Okay, so metal relaxers breaks the bonds directly, right? And quinidine relaxers break down the bonds indirectly, meaning that they swell the hair up first. Now, with these sodium hydroxides, the metal hydroxide relaxers, we have sodium, potassium, and lithium. So in each one of them, like sodium hydroxide has a sodium metal, lithium has a lithium metal, and potassium has a potassium metal, I'm sorry. And what happens is these metals make the compound highly alkaline, right? So that makes them very high on the pH scale. And know that anything that is very high on the pH scale is more harsh on the hair, meaning that it is stronger. So being that it is stronger, that is why it's able to go in and literally just break down those disulfide bonds, whereas the guanidine goes in and swells the hair first and then break the bonds. But no, the metal hydroxide relaxers just go in and they just actually break those bonds. Now let's talk about cation and anion. Cation and anion. So with the cation, cation is a positively charged ion formed by a substance losing an electron. Remember, we talked about that just a couple screens back. Losing an electron, whereas an anion is a negatively charged ion formed by a substance that's gaining an electron. So an example, shampoo and conditioner. Shampoo is an anion. Shampoo is a negatively charged ion. So what this does is this shampoo goes in, right? This anion goes in because it's negatively charged, goes in, and what it does is act like a magnet and it attracts all the dirt, the oil, and the debris, and then it is rinsed off the hair. Then you have a cation, which is the conditioner, which is a positive charge ion, right? So now this positive charge ion goes in and it connects to that anion, which is negative, and now this is what allows that hair to be smooth, to be silky, to have a shine on it. This is anion and cation. Shampoo is an anion, which is negative. Conditioner is a cation, which is positive. Lye-based relaxers. Sodium hydroxide relaxers, commonly referred to as lye relaxers, are among the oldest and most prevalent types of chemical hair relaxers. Sodium hydroxide, also known as lye or caustic soda, was once the most widely active ingredient in hair relaxer formulations. However, in recent time, no-lye relaxers, formulations without sodium hydroxide, have gained considerable popularity as well. So, okay, so these sodium hydroxide relaxers, things that we should know about them is that sodium hydroxide relaxers have a very high pH. They can lead to scalp irritations, burning, or even chemical burns if you don't apply them correctly. Okay, they must be applied correctly because with damage to hair, improper chemical relaxation is the problem. People are not applying these relaxers correctly, and you're seeing all kinds of burning and breakage and things like that. It's because they are not being applied correctly. Improper application of chemical relaxers is one of the problems. Okay, overlapping relaxers onto previous relaxed hair is another big problem. All right, hair that can lead to overprocessing, weakening the hair, and increasing the risk of breakage. Because once you overlap, and I know people that say this all the time, oh, I usually just go over my relaxer once or twice a year. I just do the whole head. Stop doing that because you are weakening the hair. We have already broken those disulfide bonds. So by you going over it again with the same chemical, you are weakening those hair strands. Okay, so you want to be able to apply that relaxer correctly. Another thing is that sodium hydroxide relaxers are the only relaxer that literally seals that cuticle the way that it should. It closes that cuticle to the point that it accepts just the right amount of moisture. Okay, so that it'll accept the right amount of moisture is the only relaxer that will be, the strand will be the same texture all the way down. Okay, because it sealed that cuticle, it does not have that rough texture to it. Okay, so you want to be able to apply these relaxers correctly. All right. Lye-based relaxers. While effective in straightening hair, sodium hydroxide is a potent alkaline compound that can lead to hair loss and severe skin burns if not used correctly or with proper precautions. Its highly caustic nature demands careful application and strict adherence to manufacturer's instructions to avoid potential harm to the scalp and hair's integrity. Now, how can relaxers lead to hair loss? One, too strong of a relaxer for your hair texture. All right. We want to make sure that you do a strand test before you apply a relaxer so that you know what strength you should be using. Okay, because if you're using, a person has very fine hair and you go in and you use a super, you got a problem. The hair is going to be very dry, very brittle, and it will begin to break. All right, so you always want to do a strand test. Another way is leaving a relaxer on the hair too long. I know people that say, oh, I leave it on even though I'm burning a little bit. I know it's working and I just want my hair to be bone straight. Okay, you don't need the hair to be bone straight. If you're burning, that's a sign that you should be rinsing. Okay, because 9 times out of 10, you probably applied it to the scalp from the jump. All right, so if you're leaving it on and you're letting it burn, you're causing more problems. Okay, so you need to apply that relaxer and remove it the way that it should be removed, when it should be removed. Okay, now, not neutralizing. Again, I have to stress that there is a neutralizing system built into the shampoo. You cannot just start randomly using any shampoo that's around that's not a neutralizing shampoo to rinse out a relaxer, to shampoo out a relaxer. You need to have a neutralizing shampoo because one, the first shampoo of the neutralizer, the first shampoo removes any chemical that's left in the hair. So imagine chemical being left in the hair. That chemical is still activated on the hair. Okay, so it's still breaking down the hair. The second shampoo stabilizes the hair and closes the cuticle. All right, and then the third shampoo brings the hair back to its normal pH. If you don't neutralize, then the hair is just left in this high pH state, which makes the hair very fragile. And if you keep doing that over and over and over, then you're going to find that the hair is breaking, that the hair is hard because that cuticle is open. So now that once that moisture gets in there, that moisture dries out. Now what's happening is you're going to have very dull hair. You won't be able to see a nice shine on the hair because the cuticle's open and that moisture has dried. And once that moisture dries in there, the hair gets that dull look. Okay, so we definitely want to close that cuticle and bring that hair back down to the normal pH. Lye-based relaxers. Manufacturers and professionals in the hair care industry have recognized the risks associated with improper use of lye relaxers, leading to the development of alternative no-lye formulations. These newer products aim to provide effective relaxation while minimizing the potential for adverse reactions and ensuring a safer application process for both clients and stylists. So, if you go into a lot of salons today, a lot of stylists use lye relaxers. I rarely find a stylist that uses a no-lye relaxer in a salon. not a professional anyway. Um, no-lye formulations were marketed for home use, but there are problems with the no-lye relaxer, in my opinion, because they do cause the drying on the hair and that they do not seal the cuticle closed. The lye relaxer is the only relaxer that does seal that cuticle closed, but the basis around all relaxers is that they have to be applied correctly. Okay, they should be applied correctly, and again, they should be applied off the scalp. Okay, remember that when we apply these relaxers on the scalp, that kind of takes away that time you have to relax this hair without getting any burning sensations, because you started off with the relaxer already on the scalp. So the relaxer already has the potential to burn the client before you can even finish the relaxer. All right. So it's about applying the relaxer off the scalp, but applying relaxers correctly. Hydroxide relaxers. Lithium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide relaxers are sometimes marketed as no mix, no lye options. While they don't contain traditional lye, sodium hydroxide, their chemical behavior and straightening performance is very similar due to the presence of different hydroxide compounds. Now, we just talked a couple screens back about lithium and potassium being metal hydroxide relaxers, meaning that there is a lithium metal and a potassium metal in these relaxers, which causes them to break the hair down directly, break down those disulfide bonds directly, right? Just goes in and breaks down those bonds. But the thing with no mix, no lye is that they contain conditioning agents and moisturizers to try to eliminate or mitigate that potential damage and dryness caused by the relaxer. Now, it caused less drying. It's still drying, but it caused a little less drying than a regular no-lye, but it still causes drying on the hair. But remember that this is a metal relaxer, so it's still high. It still has a high pH, but it has metal, a lithium metal, and a potassium metal in these types of no-lye, no-mix relaxers. Okay? No-lye relaxers. Guanidine hydroxide relaxers are also advertised as no-lye, but they still rely on hydroxide ions as the active straightening agent, just like lye relaxers. Guanidine hydroxide formula comes in two separate components that must be freshly mixed right before application. All right, so guanidine hydroxide relaxers are not like the metal hydroxide relaxers. Remember, metal hydroxide relaxers breaks the hair down directly, just goes in and breaks the hair down. But with guanidine no-lye relaxers, it goes in, it swells up the hair shaft, and then it breaks down the bonds. And that is why it is known to be more gentle on the hair, because of the way it breaks down those disulfide bonds. Now, a no-lye relaxer, unlike a lye relaxer, a no-lye comes in two parts. You have the activator and you have the relaxer, which you have to mix the activator in with the relaxer and mix it up. If you do not mix that activator, you will not get any straightening on the hair, because the activator mixed with that relaxer is what's going to straighten the hair. Okay, now guanidine hydroxide relaxers are known to be more gentle on the scalp compared to a lye relaxer. But we've talked many times that relaxers do not go on the scalp. All right, so you have guanidine hydroxide relaxers, which is a no-lye, comes in two parts, breaks the hair down indirectly, means it swells the hair cuticle. All right. One thing about a no-lye relaxer is that a no-lye relaxer will leave a film on the hair. All right. You still have to use neutralizing shampoo. Remember, the same thing that goes for that lye relaxer goes for the no-lye relaxer. Must be shampooed, it must be neutralized with a neutralizing shampoo. No-lye relaxers. Guanidine relaxers can straighten hair completely with potentially less scalp irritation compared to other hydroxide-based relaxers. As a result, many guanidine hydroxide relaxer kits are recommended for those with sensitive scalp and are sold over the counter for home use. Now, we've already talked about these no-lye relaxers, that they do cause dryness on the hair. They also leave a film on the hair. All right. But these no-lye relaxers, they will be something like, if you have a client that is very sensitive, have a very sensitive scalp, this might be a relaxer that you would want to use on your client. Now, things that you would need to know about these no-lye relaxers afterwards is that you need to keep the hair moisturized. You don't want to use a lot of drying products, because remember, the hair is already going to have a drying effect on the hair. All right, so you want to use chemicals on the hair. You don't want to use a lot of things with alcohol or anything like that. You want to make sure that you shampoo with a sulfate-free shampoo. You don't want to use anything with a lot of alcohol in it. You want to like spritz and sprays and things like that. You want to make sure that you tell your client to shampoo regularly, use conditioners, and make sure that the hair is moisturized often. Okay, to keep the hair moisturized, because the hair could become as you get these relaxers over and over and over, the hair just continues to become more dry. So in that dryness, you'll be able to see, because the hair will always look dull. I don't care how much stuff you put on it, it will always look dull. And remember that the no-lye relaxer does not seal that cuticle. All right, it has that film on the hair. It does not seal that cuticle, and the moisture gets in there, and then when that moisture evaporates, it leaves the hair dry. Okay, so you want to make sure that you relay those things to your client about taking care of the hair afterwards. You also want to make sure that your client has the potential to take care of that hair. Because if you have a client and they go to the gym often, you need to make sure that you tell them, look, you're going to have to make sure that this hair is moisturized. You're going to have to make sure that you keep this hair up, because a relaxer, I don't care whether it's lye or no lye, they are going to have to keep that up every 6 to 8 weeks. Because what's going to happen if you don't keep it up, then you're going to grow in all this new growth, and you thinking you can go 5, 6, 7 months. Now you're going to have breakage just because you let too much new growth build up. So you need to make sure that your client has the wherewithal to maintain this no-lye relaxer. Okay. Another thing with no-lye relaxers is you want to make sure that you neutralize, and with a neutralizing shampoo, not just a regular any old shampoo. You want to make sure that you neutralize, get that relaxer off the scalp. If there's anything left in the hair, that neutralizer and shampoo is going to remove any of that. It's going to close the cuticle as much as it could close the cuticle, because remember, it has that film on there. And then it's also going to bring the hair back down to a normal pH, because we do not want to leave the hair in that high pH, especially on no-lye hair, because no-lye relaxers, because the hair is already prone to be dry. Okay. No-lye relaxers. While guanidine relaxers may reduce scalp irritation, guanidine hydroxide relaxers do not necessarily reduce hair damage if used improperly. In fact, they tend to cause more swelling of the hair during processing and can be excessively drying, especially with repeated relaxing sessions over time. So this is pretty much what I've been saying about the no-lye relaxer, that it does cause the drying, and the reason for the drying is because, one, there's a film on the hair that also allows for the cuticle not to lay completely flat. And so the moisture gets inside, and when it evaporates, the hair becomes dry. And then the more you get these no-lye relaxers, the more drying the hair gets. Okay, so that is one thing about these no-lye relaxers. Now, you, again, with all relaxers, you want to make sure that you are applying them properly. Okay, so you want to make sure that you are mixing them well and applying them well. You want to make sure that your client is up to date with how to take care of it afterwards, and the type of shampoo and types of conditioners that needs to be used on the hair, so that she can protect the hair from as much drying as possible. No-lye relaxers. While marketed as no-lye alternatives, lithium, potassium, and guanidine hydroxide relaxers still use hydroxide chemistry fundamentally similar to traditional lye relaxers. Care must still be taken to avoid hair damage, even if scalp effects are potentially minimized with some of these hydroxide-based options. So remember, you always need to base the scalp with a relaxer base, not just any hair grease or whatever you have around the house. You want to use a base to base that scalp, and not just the hairline. You want to base the entire scalp. Okay, and you also want to make sure of, if you look in this video prior to this, I listed things in there where clients need to make sure that they kind of watch out for, like caffeine, going to the gym prior, coming to the salon prior to leaving the gym, after you have sweated, after you have maybe went for a run, any of those things. You want to make sure about their menstrual cycle. So if you go back and check that video for those things that they need to kind of potentially watch out for. Okay. Low pH relaxers. Sulfites and bisulfites compounds are sometimes employed as low pH hair relaxers, offering a milder alternative approach. Ammonium sulfites and ammonium bisulfites are among the most commonly used active ingredients in these formulations. So already we know a low pH relaxer is going to have a lower pH on the pH scale. So a low pH relaxer runs around about an 8 to a 9. All right, on the pH scale, which is very low for a relaxer, because hydroxide relaxer run as high as a 13.5, right? So now the lower pH helps minimize the disruption of the hair's natural structure. Now, it also reduces the damage, because the low pH causes it to break the hair down slower, okay? So which means that it breaks it down at a much slower rate, which helps to minimize irritation on the scalp. Now, low pH relaxer also contains moisturizing agents, and so that they could minimize like the dryness on the scalp. Remember, a low pH relaxer is already relaxing the hair at a slower pace, but now we have moisturizers and conditioner agents that will help minimize the dryness. Will the hair still become dry? It will become dry, but not as much. It will not be as dry, because remember, even though it's a low pH relaxer, it's not going to straighten it super. You can't go in with coarse hair saying I'm going to straighten your hair out super straight with a low pH relaxer, because it just won't happen. All right, so you want to go in with a low pH relaxer on someone that has, let's say, fine hair, a very sensitive scalp, something like that. You do not want to try to relax somebody with coarse, thick hair with a low pH relaxer. Okay, so we do, again, it minimizes the dryness because it has moisturizers and conditioning agents in the relaxer. All right, now who is it suitable for? Individuals with, like I said, sensitive scalp, right? A person that, because a lot of times some people have very sensitive scalps and you don't know why. All right. Um, Relaxers are still effective. This low pH relaxer is still effective at straightening the hair. But remember, it's only going to straighten to a degree. You're not going to be able to straighten somebody with super coarse hair with a low pH relaxer. Low pH relaxers. Low pH sulfite relaxers are marketed as gentler options, ideal for those with color treated, damaged, or fine hair that may not withstand harsher alkaline relaxers well. However, they are not strong enough to achieve complete straightening on extremely curly, coarse textures. So remember now, with these low pH relaxers, they're only an 8 or a 9 on the pH scale. So they're not going to straighten extremely curly or coarse hair super straight. Even people with very curly hair, it's just going to relax that natural curl. Maybe take it from a curly state to maybe a wavy state. Okay, so it's, remember, it's a low pH sulfite relaxer, so it's not going to do the same job as a hydroxide relaxer, but it will straighten the hair out, make it more manageable. Low pH relaxers. While low pH relaxers are compatible and usable together with diol-based relaxers containing thioglycolates, sulfites and bisulfite relaxers cannot be combined with hydroxide lye relaxers due to chemical incompatibilities. So just like with the thio cannot be compatible with hydroxide relaxers, this is telling you that low pH relaxers are not compatible with hydroxide relaxers. You cannot mix the two chemicals together. Okay? You cannot, because it will cause breakage. All right, so you want to be mindful of that. That is why a consultation is needed. A consultation is important because you need to know what's on that head, versus what you're about to put on her head. Low pH relaxers. Their low pH, milder action make these sulfites and bisulfite systems suitable for more delicate hair in need of curl reduction rather than maximum straightening. They provide a compromise between gentle conditioning and moderate curl relaxing for fragile hair that requires less restructuring than other relaxer types allow. So again, you just have to know that this relaxer is used on someone that hair, the hair cannot be super thick. Is used for someone that we just want to reduce the curls, relax the curls just enough to be able to manage the hair. It is not going to give you that super bone straight straightening. You want to use this on someone that has sensitive scalp or someone with fine hair, thin hair. Definitely not anyone with coarse or thick hair, because you will not get the results that you want. All right, so we've reached the end of our video. And this is it for our relaxer series on this chemical textured services. I hope that you guys have learned something. If you learned anything or anything piqued your interest, please leave me a note down below. If you have any questions or comments about the video, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you guys in the next video. Following this screen is several Q&As to help you reinforce what you've learned here today. And I'll see you guys in the next video.